First item on the agenda is our consent agenda. Includes the agenda, the minutes from the last meeting, and financial reports, which you all received electronically. The only comment I'd like to make to that is on the minutes, where it stated that I thank the staff for their hard work for the last couple of weeks during the Tyson thing. I really meant to expand that because I think the board wants to thank the staff for all of their hard work that they put in, not just the last couple of weeks on the Tyson situation, but all of the time and effort that you...
I'm glad you cleared that up, because I was thinking that was the only time that, they did anything.
Just the last 2 weeks.
Well, I thought you were just
I just thought you were going to retract the whole statement.
Yeah, but I did want to broaden that a little bit, so there he is. Morning, Phil.
Morning, Phil.
Morning, Phil.
So,
Morning, Phil.
good morning, Phil. You recognize the fact that we appreciate all of the hard work and long hours and everything that you put in, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Any other additions or corrections to the minutes or financials or anything else? If
I
not,
move we approve the consent agenda.
got a motion, we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Further discussion? Not all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Would anybody in the public like to make a statement? Sheila, please do.
Sheila Crane with Downtown Vision. I just wanted to say some coordination on their part in the mobile unit from Brentwood Community College as well as Makerspace down to Fall Fest. It was hugely popular. There was a point during the morning when it was just wall to wall of kids. And my sprinting from one end of Main Street to the other throughout the day, there were kids in there all day long. So we wanted to thank them for their assistance in that, and hopefully some of those kids got some exposure to something that will lead them in the direction of a career path down the road.
Very good.
Very
All thanks.
Thank you, Sheila. I understand Fall Fest was a great success and everything went very well, so congratulations.
And she even had perfect weather. Well done, Sheila.
Yeah, true. Okay,
Excuse me.
anyone else?
Nothing today.
Okay. If not, we'll move on to President's report. Lana?
Good morning.
Morning.
We haven't had any extended feedback from the Department of Commerce on any of the projects that we've submitted RFPs for over the past several months, unfortunately.
Pull that door shut. No. No? Can't.
Yeah, it's all right.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to take a moment to introduce Mr. Kamenasono, Ryoichi Kamenasono. He is visiting us from Japan, and we're working with him on various projects and opportunities.
Very good.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, Prospect 219. This is a project that, excuse me, we submitted some sites for. They were the prospect that had very specific site requirements, and we were able to secure them a site. I did follow up with them yesterday, and we'll should have further information.
Just Mr. Fuji.
He has.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excuse me, go ahead.
You're okay. Project Birmingham, we've had several follow-up meetings related to utilities and a lot of discussions on workforce training, workforce procurement, and we continue to work very closely with them as we work toward fruition on this project. I am so sorry. Again, the Department of Commerce RFPs, we've heard nothing on. Project Pinkies, they are locating in the Garden City Plaza. They have secured a contractor, is my understanding, to start the renovation work on their space. They're going into the former Muya space, so most of the kitchen stuff was still in place, which helps significantly. We did do an e-community loan with them, which is our partnership with New Network Kansas, where we're able to offer entrepreneurial loans for startup businesses. And we're very excited to get them going. They've been super active. They were at Fall Fest, and I think they had an event every day this past weekend, but they've been very pleased with the following that they've established here.
Do you know what their approximate start date is
They're
out there?
anticipating 3 to 4 months on the renovations.
First year?
That's what they're hoping for. Yeah.
Okay. I've had some questions and I didn't know.
Yeah. They're anxious to get started, just like we're anxious to have them. So, Project Rochester, again, that is the First National Bank development there on the hill, from Target down to the Quick Shop. We have had a couple of businesses express an interest in locating within that development. So we have been working with First National Bank and some local investors on opportunities to build to suit and those types of things to help them out with filling up that development. 516.3 is the value-added ag project that we've worked on. We continue to have lots of activity around this project, and I should have some additional information towards the end of the week towards some of the goals that we've been working on with this. The Translit facility has added another 140 acres to their facility and are working now, we're working with them and the Kansas Department of Transportation to add additional rail. We did submit all of their rail drawings for approval, and hopefully everything will get signed off on. They do have to get some zoning changed on a portion of the property that they just bought, and submit all of those plans through the Planning Commission and the city and county. So hopefully that process will go smoothly, and we'll be adding significant additional rail there.
What is their total acreage now?
As of right now, there's somewhere around 800 acres. Yeah.
So the acreage that they purchased, does that go to Raceway Road or does that go to?
Not quite.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's still short of that.
There's a cornfield that's.
Roman Halper's property
Okay.
is between them and Raceway at this point, yes.
Not bad for a couple of guys with a small plan to.
A couple of guys in a pickup truck, so yeah.
10 or 15 acres to start with, so,
Yeah.
yeah, it's turned out very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I quit saying a couple of shabby guys in a pickup truck, they
Better
took
be
offense to that.
Semi, let's call this semi.
We have had a very, very busy month, as you can tell, and it doesn't look like we're going to slow down any in October. We have been working with some of the area dairymen on some of their coal cow concerns and helping them to find solutions as they work through when they switch out milking cows and so forth. So we have some follow-up meetings this month regarding that.
What, explain cold cow.
Coal cow,
Coal.
that's
Coal, as in take
C-U-L-L,
them out of
when they
production.
cull the herds, when they take a
When you
milking
get
cow.
older and can't perform
You
like
get
they used to.
They called you out.
I got you. All right, I understand now. Gotcha. I'm getting close to that.
No, you're not, you're fine. So upcoming events, we have done the quarterly reports to the city of Garden City, Finney County, and the city of Holcomb. And Garden City Community College is actually going to have us come out and do the quarterly report for them, but Dr. Ruda has not given me a date firm on when he wants me to do that. The Garden City Community College Centennial Celebration, they have several happenings this weekend, so if you get the opportunity to go out and support them on Friday and Saturday, that would be wonderful.
Is that October or September 27th and 28th?
I'm sorry, it's September.
You're
I was in a
already
hurry.
into,
I'm
Yeah.
moving along.
you're moving right on.
Yeah. And then we do have, obviously, we have seats up for election this year. Garden City Commission, the candidate forum will be held October 15th at 6 p.m. here in this room. And then the school board, Garden City School Board 457, and the Garden City Community College candidate forums will take place October 17th at 6 p.m. and then the second one starts at, I think, 7:30. But again, they'll be in this room that evening. So that is all I have for you.
Could you explain a little bit about the information on the opportunity zones that were basically designated, I guess, by the city? There's several different plots around town.
We had 2 census tracts approved. Those came from the Tax and Jobs Act of 2017. Actually, they were approved by Congress in December, excuse me, of 2017. Unfortunately, the IRS wasn't quite prepared for that, and they did not issue any even preliminary guidelines for how to access those until October of 2018. We are still awaiting final guidelines. We've had some updates to those guidelines along the way. But the way that it was set up was there were eligible census tracts all across the U.S. and they had to have certain requirements, meet certain requirements to be eligible. And then each governor, the president authorized each governor the opportunity to designate 10% roughly of the qualified tracts within their state as actual federal qualified opportunity zones. In Kansas, that process was handled competitively, so communities who had eligible census tracts were required to submit proposals as to why their census tracts should be selected and what types of projects they believed they would be able to accomplish should those tracts be selected. In Kansas, we had 70 census tracts available for the governor to approve out of 760 qualified or eligible opportunity zone tracts. Finney County was able to secure 2 of those. Our 2 largest census tracts we were able to get included in that. One is very much the industrial area, starting at Conestoga and going on east towards the airport. The other is starts in downtown at the corner of Pine and Main, stays on the west side of Main Street, extends out south past the Buffalo Dunes Golf Course, almost to the county line, and then extends west kind of in a winding fashion between Garden City and Holcomb in that kind of development envelope that's between those. Again, because the IRS guidance was fairly slow to catch up to the projects, there are now several investors who are awaiting opportunities to invest in the zones because they do give them the luxury of not paying full capital gains taxes on the gains that they invest, but even probably more importantly to most investors, at the end of their 10-year investment period, any gains realized from day 1 of project to day 10 or year 10 of project are forgiven. So there are no gains due on anything that takes place within those 10 years in the business that they invest in. We have a few projects that we design ourselves to sell and to allow investment in, and we continue to work with largely attorneys and accountants who have clients in need of those investments in order to market those projects.
Thank you.
Is that what you needed? Okay, any questions on any of that? Okay, the good news with those, probably the most exciting thing from the economic development standpoint with those census tracts is that the projects were very wide open. There was basically no limitations, with the exception of it couldn't be a casino. The way the law is written, it couldn't be a, quote, sin business, end quote. So casinos and private golf courses were specifically excluded from investment opportunities. But outside of that, it really could be anything. It could be industrial, agricultural, retail, housing, you name it. So.
But one zone starts basically with Conestoga and goes east, and the other is on the west side of Main Street and goes west.
And south, yes.
And south.
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Not. Nicole has been fairly busy this last month also. So Nicole, would you like to give us a report on your stuff?
Sure. Good morning.
Good morning.
At the high school, we got planning underway for the freshman career fair, which is scheduled for December 7th. And we'll be doing the same format as we have done in the past few years. And Steve Martinez has been requested especially to come speak to the kids. Apparently he's a fan favorite. Steve comes and he's a part of not really a panel, but we have 4 or 5 other community members come and talk about their journey as to how they got to where they are now, and talks about, a lot of them are locals that grew up in Finney County. We have a couple that aren't, but we try to get locals. So they come and they talk to the freshmen about their career path that they chose and the steps that they took to get to where they are now. And then they go out into the commons area and they get to speak with the actual businesses on a one-on-one basis and talk about what needs to be done in that career. And we schedule this so that happens about a month before they take their, they call it Zello this year. Last year it was career cruising, but it's the test, basically an aptitude type test that they take that kind of helps them determine what pathway they would like to enter into for their sophomore, junior, and senior years. Holcomb High School has also reached out for some assistance on a financial literacy type event that they're going to put together for their high school kids. Jenna Johnson, which is their, basically their CTE coordinator, basically what Jenny Hands does here. They're putting together an event that's she wants to have insurance, banking, talking to these kids about the importance of having health insurance, of having a retirement plan. So we're working with her on getting the people scheduled to come present that to the kids. And I believe she has that scheduled for November 20th. As far as with the college, we've been very busy with the college. Ryan Ruda and Chuck Pfeiffer and Mark visited earlier this month. They went to Salina and Emporia and visited the sites, the other 2 programs in the state that do dental assistance. And from what I could gather, it was a very good visit. Both institutions were more than willing to offer help in getting this program here started. They are thinking they're going to slate to open, I believe, fall of 2021. So that's exciting. We'll have that new program in the allied health portion of the college. We've also had a couple meetings with local industry requesting the need for a certified medical assistance program. And this has not only been a local need, it's in our entire region. It's something that's coming down from insurance companies. Hospitals and doctors' offices are not able to get reimbursed for certain amounts of work unless a certified medical assistant has been the one that did the work. So they're looking through that process, and we're hoping that there is some apprenticeship money available from the federal government, which we have participated in the past with the college. So we're hoping to get that implemented so that we can start the apprenticeship program with the CMA, and that provides a little bit of assistance to employers. They can get reimbursed for some tuition costs if they choose to send some employees through the program. So we're moving forward with that. I've been working with Mark on some 4-year degree assessments. They've been working with Fort Hays State on offering some bachelor's degrees here in town. Currently, they've identified criminal justice, education, and business as some degrees that they would like to look into. So we've sent out surveys to the high school here, but then also all of the high schools in the Garden City Community College service area. We've also sent them out to the kids there. And we have an adult learners survey that we will post out on Facebook and send through email to get some different perspective on that end of it too. So moving forward with that. I've been meeting with Chuck to determine some non-credit classes, a schedule very similar to what they used to do when Gene Morta was there and they did the continuing education catalog. Nothing that comprehensive and huge is what Gene did. But we're getting together a schedule that we can hopefully get out so people have a kind of a menu to choose from of what they like to see. He has a couple that he's going to be able to offer through the rest of 2019. Woodworking, QuickBooks, Microsoft Office were a few, and then there's a couple more kind of fun one-off things that he wants to do. So we're working on getting those done for the rest of the year, and then setting a more permanent schedule for the spring semester of next year, which will include, obviously the QuickBooks, the Microsoft Office, the continuing education for the insurance agents, which they've done all along, just maybe not as widely known that they're doing those. So we'll have a set schedule, hopefully. I'm not sure how they'll send it out electronically through the paper. I don't know what they'll do, but moving forward with that. We're also scheduling, working with Chuck and Workforce Development right now. We're gonna set a workforce summit for here in Garden City for our local employers, but also our regional employers. We talked with Workforce One in Tucky Allen, and he thought that there was a huge need to maybe do something a little closer to home for our employers. We have workforce conferences in Wichita and Topeka, but sometimes that's a little tough for people to say, yeah, I can lose an employee for 2 to 3 days, plus the expense of travel and conference fees. So we're looking at doing, it's a 2-day event, but the first day is strictly for faculty of community colleges are gonna come in, and they're gonna get trained on the Bring Your A Game concept, which we've talked about here before. The Garden City Community College is the only community college in this half of the state that has certified instructors that teach it. So they've worked with KBOR, and they're going to bring out the guy that does it, and he lives in Denver. So he's gonna come out and talk to him and train up whoever wants to get trained on that, the 19th, and then the 20th. We're gonna open him up and have him as the keynote to talk to employers about the importance of success skills, essential skills, and then have some breakouts on some different topics. So hopefully be able to make it a kind of a 1-day event, but have some value in it too, so it's not overly expensive, and I think it'll be good. And also on October 12th, the community college will be having a car show event that will showcase the automotive technology program at the college. And they will also have the mobile lab on display for anyone who would like to go through and view it. It seems to be quite the hit. People want to see inside of it, so they're gonna have that open, and then they're also going to be doing, they will have the shop open, since they did a lot of almost remodeling back there, painted and expanded the auto shop and everything back there, so they'll have that open for everybody. They'll be doing tutorials on how to change a tire, how to check your oils, how to refill your windshield washer fluid, and all of that stuff. So that's October 12th.
So is that all on newer vehicles, or is that, I'm just asking, the car show, you know, that they tend to
Yes.
have, is there classic cars?
It
Are
will be
there
a
any?
typical Garden City car show, so there will be all types of cars there, and on the tutorials, Ryan Grubbs is extremely well-versed on pretty much any type of maintenance on any car, so
Okay,
Very good.
awesome.
that's all I got.
Has there been any discussion on, I know there potentially may be a need in the future for construction type of, from plumbers
Yeah,
to,
We've met with the builders over the summer on 3 or 4 different occasions. They actually designed a pathway for the high school and said this is the classes we need at the college. So Jenny Hands has it, and we're moving forward. That's going to be part of our Perkins assessment that we write in February to send to the state. It will be that additional funding that we can put a construction pathway in at the high school. And so that's kind of the first step to that. We need to get that going, and then the college will follow along with what classes they can do. They're already doing some forklift certifications and one-offs that the contractors need right now. But along with that assessment, it was not only just the construction side, it was the whole contractors. It was HVAC, it was electricity, it was everything. And so it was a good thing for the college and the high school to see that yes, it is a need, and just because they're not up there banging on your door every 5 minutes because they're like building houses and stuff. So yeah, it was no one's ever expressed that need. Well, it's there. They're just really busy doing other things. So that's our job to advocate for that.
okay,
I
so.
think our fellow board member, Mr. Kreitzer, has expressed that need for the last several years.
I think
We need
the thing that
that.
I really like is the, number one, the cooperation between Holcomb and Garden City School District. It's awesome. You know, it's something we haven't had in ever. And then, of course, community college working the same way. they went through the pathways that both Holcomb and Garden City have, and there are so many, let's go 16 to 24 different paths you can take, and trying to formalize something of saying, all right, let's start getting businesses directly involved, employers to teachers, employers to students, and vice versa. They're taking this first year and in-depth working on about 4 industries to try to make sure that whatever pattern we set up, we do it right and we have a game plan, and then move it to the next level. And this year, education and medical.
Education, health, manufacturing, and did we pick 3 or 4? 3.
I think it is the
good
3.
where we
And
went.
the quote-unquote manufacturing has several different arms, if you will, including industrial maintenance, which ties into some of the new businesses we have, as well as the continuing maintenance. And in a lot of ways, it'll take the same skills that the construction trade needs and give them the basic tool safety and this kind of stuff. So it's a running start, but I think the whole concept of let's make sure we do it right first, and then do all the learning in these 3 before we try to do 16.
Well, and it's been an education on, I think, both the high school and the college as far as Kansas Board of Regents versus Kansas State Department of Education. Because Kansas State Department of Education has their career pathway set up, and they actually do a really great job, and it's really easy to go through them, and they have great course descriptions. And then you go to K-Board, and it's kind of like, well, you just make up your class name, but it's just like this class. So there's not a lot of uniformity on that side of things. The college has a lot of leeway on what they can do on that. And so they can say, well, I have this class and we do this, but then the high school will say, we do this. Well, then after you actually get them together and talk about it, it's the same class. They're working on the same competencies. And so that's been really good because they have 2+2 opportunities, more than they even thought they used to have. They have a lot of those opportunities available now. So I think getting that communication going and having them talk is like, oh, these are the same classes. We actually do these things. And so that's been good. It's crazy that there's been that lack, but I mean, it's good going forward that we know, okay, this is how KSDE works, this is how KBOR works. We can figure it out.
Well, and I'm sorry, I would just, again, I think the recognition of the importance of our role as an advocate for all of our educational entities, it has become even more apparent over the past couple of months. Mr. Kreitzer got to be a part of an email stream that we were informed by our schools that they were classifying all of our Tyson jobs, any jobs in the Southwest Kansas region related to the various packing facilities had been categorized by the Department of Labor and then further by the Board of Regents as culinary, hospitality, and event management jobs. Well, as you can imagine, when they're setting this, the Perkins funding that she keeps referring to, Perkins is the name of the program that federally that determines how much money gets handed down to states to then further be distributed to school districts and community colleges related to technical education. However, they're changing how they do that funding. They're now doing it on a 5-year allotment, if you will. And again, they were classifying those jobs as culinary arts. Obviously, we didn't see that there was a lot of correlation there. But they were, we know when we reached out to them, they came back, Department of Labor, and said, yeah, no, we moved it. Nationally, it's recognized as an industrial, manufacturing, but we moved it because it was food. And we said, well, that's a problem for us because we need to make sure that we're funding our manufacturing pathways, our food safety, our maintenance, and all of those things. And it took something over 2 weeks of back and forth and a few phone calls and so forth, but we were able to advocate for those jobs for both the employers and for the education side in order to resolve that. So I think it's important to know that.
Well, and it's really important because that's how the school districts are reimbursed. And if they're trying to do this training that they have to put in a certain box, they can't do what the industry needs. And so by being able to adjust what we actually do and finding a new box to put it in, it's a lot easier. And just one final deal on it. The ultimate cooperation level, I think, between the community college, the school districts at Holcomb and Garden, is that when they have a healthcare curriculum pathway, they have an advisory board, and it's required by the Perkins people. Holcomb, Garden City, and the community college have agreed to use the same advisory board. So instead of having 7 of these guys and 7 of those and 7 of those, now we got one, and we start creating a base that works for our entire community. And it really is going to be a powerful thing. So,
Well, and the Perkins program, the community colleges have participated in Perkins for years, and because community colleges are known for their tech side of things, they really can probably walk through the Perkins process pretty much blindfolded. They know that this is what we need to do. It's a bit new for the high school, especially the ones that do the CTE pathways, because that's relatively new. So it is absolutely imperative for our high schools to understand the need for getting the data in for the Perkins, because especially here, we have programs that are probably gonna get cut because the Perkins funding will be cut for it, because we can't prove a need for that job in our community. That's part of the change, is they've really pared it down and said, if you can't prove a need in your community for this job, then you're gonna have to get real creative on why you're getting Perkins funding for fashion design or something like that. So we've had to kind of dig down deep and figure out, okay, we've got kids in this pathway, but it's not necessarily equating to a job in our community. What do we need to write to get that funding? Because like I said, if they get Perkins funding taken away from them because of the other issues at the state level with our KSDE funding, there's just some kids that aren't going to have that pathway as an option. So it's very imperative for our high schools that they maintain their Perkins funding.
I can tell you just, briefly that I had the opportunity to attend a few of these meetings, and like Bob said, I was totally impressed with the cooperation levels between the community college and the USD 457 and 363. After, about the first meeting, these people all realized that, we're doing pretty much the same thing, and we've been doing it independently, and it would really be amazing if we come together and do this jointly. And I think with this group that Bob has spearheaded, and thanks to the Board of Education and the governor or whoever, it is going to be very fruitful in Finney County. I think we're going to see some amazing things. And Bob mentioned the consolidated advisory groups for these pathways is going to be very good. So I think things are really going to start coming together and look very good in this educational area.
So to get involved in the workforce or the program, just get in touch with you?
Yep.
Or, okay, all right, thank you.
she is in charge
All right.
and does a great job.
Okay, as I mentioned, you can see Nicole has been somewhat busy this last month, so it's definitely kept her moving and kept her going. So, any further questions for Nicole or anything on workforce, or you're going to have to leave?
Yes, sir. May I be excused? I am.
Whenever you're ready, what? You
Before
go.
Shannon gets started.
You can go work on your traffic duties and.
No, I wish that's what it is. All right, thank you.
Okay, good luck.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks.
Okay,
See you.
Shannon, would you like to, we've talked about this study for the last couple of months, and with one thing or something else, we've not managed to get it on the agenda or get it through the agenda. So Shannon, would you like to do that today?
I was going to be impressed with everybody showing up, but I see Steve decided he wanted to step up. Actually, first I'll go over the social media report. So With the changes in the office, one of the benefits for you guys is that you get 100% more of me at board meetings, because I will be reporting on the social media for Finney County Economic Development. So if we go look through some of these numbers, they're down a little bit from last month, but remember last month was a lot of that having to do with the Tyson and all those efforts. The Greater Garden City webpage, greatergardencity.com, saw 5,109 visits over the 30-day period that it's measured on, which is about 170 a day. The top stories there was the partnership between Garden City Community College and the Colby Community College Fire Science Training, the GCHS Athletics Hall of Fame announcements, the Crystal Apple semi-finalists, and then a new grant that the city got, the Disney grant, to improve access to playgrounds, or a playground, Harold Long Park in Garden City. For the Facebook pages, one thing that I'm changing up from the way it was reported before is there's a couple different ways we can measure how we're impacting the community. So the first, and this wasn't reported before, so the first way is the number of total post view over the last 28 days. So how many of the posts that we saw did people see overall? So one person could see 3 posts in 28 days, and that would count as 3. So over the last 28 days, we had 48,252 post views. So on average, that's 1,723 post views a day. The next step down is the number of people reached. So this is unique. So the difference between these two numbers is, one, these people reached, if we're talking about like a magazine or a newspaper, this is basically like how many subscribers over that last month do we have? How many saw at least one of our things, unique people? And that's 11,164. So 11,164 people combined saw 40,000 posts. So about over that month period, each person saw on average about 4 posts, or about 1 post a week. And then we have that standard 4,544 post engagements, which is like those likes and comments and shares. Those are some sort of interaction that they had, not just viewing it, but interacting with those things. That's something we have there. And again, there's some top posts there, and then also those stats for the Greater Garden City Facebook page. So really good. We're reaching a significant proportion of our population through our social media. Any questions on social media? All right. So with the reports, we are definitely being effective, and it's important because I got Sealand's little pointer.
Okay.
So I can come over here and point at it. It's all right. So sorry for the audio person because I'm going to be over here. Okay, so there's 2 reports. The first one is this Gruen and Gruen report, and this is an update to the market study. This is a company that did the Shulman Crossing study, and this is an update for Rochester. Okay, so the first thing is just a reminder of what we have measured as the primary, secondary, and tertiary trade area. It's important to note that this Gruen and Gruen report specifically just considers Kansas as our primary trade area, even though we know, like Hawley, Colorado, they definitely primary shop here, down in the Oklahoma Panhandle. But we have our primary, secondary, and tertiary trade areas. Again, our primary trade area has 200,000 people, our secondary adds another 50, our tertiary adds another 237,000 people, for a total of just over 500,000 people in our total trade area. Good. The 4 main findings from this Gruen and Gruen report is that unmet retail demand within the primary trade area, there is the unmet demand, and new supply will not depend on siphoning sales from existing tenants. So what this is saying is if we build new retail, those customers will come in from outside. It's not taking just customers that are going somewhere else in town and just moving over here. There is unmet demand for more retail. The retail development over the past 15 years has succeeded in making Garden City a hub city for retail. The sectors in the retail base in Garden City capture between 43 to 70% of total primary trade demand. So we are, out of the whole primary trade area, we are capturing about this much of that demand. Remember that primary trade area also includes Garden City and Dodge City. So that's a pretty good number for us when we're talking about how much of shoe sales or those different kinds of sales do we do here in that whole area. They did note that restaurants capture a third of our primary trade area. So there is still room to grow in all of these, but specifically with restaurants. And opportunities exist to expand and diversify the restaurant offerings in Garden City. Okay. They went through and talked about the build out of retail on the eastern side of Kansas, Kansas Avenue and that whole corridor area. So we started pre-1993 with 388,000, and then we added each year, and we can see that this is around Shulman Crossing area time that we added another 400,000 square feet. So what's interesting, this is when we presented this to the county, said this is one of the numbers that you need to be excited about. This is, you can't tell, but this is an exciting slide. So this is comparing between 2003 and 2018. And the important number about 2003 is that that is really, you can consider it before internet sales. I mean, we had the internet, but Amazon wasn't what Amazon was. Walmart.com wasn't what that was. So this is pre-internet sales for retail. This is posted, this is now. In Finney County, or Garden City, our sales have gone up, but part of that is because our square footage has gone up. We went from 1 million square feet in Garden City to 1.6 million square feet of retail space. But here's the important number. We've gone from $262 per square foot up to $266 per square foot. So after the internet, now it's a better time for people to be opening up retail in Garden City than before the internet. So when people are talking about retail apocalypse and box stores are dead and nobody was going shopping anymore, we're actually selling more now per square foot. And it's not because we have the same supply and larger population. We have almost double the supply. And we're selling more per square foot inside of this category here. So this is one of those really important things that we're doing good. And it's not just because we have more space. It's because we're actually becoming more and more of a hub, like we were saying. We are drawing in more of that trade area. So this is really important because this is a good number for them to see, the retailers to see, that we are actually overcoming the obstacles of the internet and even doing better than we were.
And it is important to note that automobile sales
Yes.
are excluded from this data.
So no automobile,
There's
no
no
gas
large
station,
ticket.
no, all that, yeah. Yep, all that is excluded. This is just pure retail outside of that. What they find is that, so remember before we built out 400,000 square feet, that original report said that's about how much our trade area could have. So we built up, Shulman Crossing built up what we deemed to be the access need for retail. Well, now they do this new report and say, you know what, actually, in 2018, we actually have another expansion area of 484,000 square feet of retail that Garden City can support. Our trade area is demanding this much more. So, I mean, as of right now, we basically have enough room to do another Shulman Crossing type of retail. And then in 5 years, which when they made it 5 years, it's now 4 years, almost 3 years away, we have another 200,000 on top of that we could support. So our demand for retail and the supply that we can maintain is very good in this. So that's another important thing that we do have unmet demand that we can capitalize on with the developments that we have. And it's not just taking some money from here and moving it over here inside of Garden City. This is money that's leaking outside of our trade area that we can keep on capturing and keep it inside of here to keep people from going to places like Colorado Springs and Denver, or go to Wichita, or go to those other places. This is demand that we can capture inside our own city. So that's one report. Any questions on that one?
I would be interested to see, like, in 10 years, with the rural development of the Wi-Fi and, you know, them reaching out in the rural Americas, how that's gonna affect that.
So some of it, if you look at the research of what's going on, at the beginning of the internet itself, like back, I'd say like 8 years ago, 10 years ago, people are like, nobody's gonna shop anymore at stores. They're all gonna do it online.
Yeah, no.
And that's not really what is happening. A lot of those little sales that maybe you would have went to Walmart to get some paper towels, maybe now you order those online or something like that. But the retail hub thing is actually strengthening. It's one of those things where it's a consolidation process, And the outlying areas with the small shops are gonna have problems, but the concentrated areas are actually gonna have growth because of the internet, because of things like curbside pickup for Target and stuff like that. So it actually works in our favor that we have built this retail hub, because as the internet progresses, they are now thinking that retail hubs will continue to grow larger. Some of those other smaller communities that don't have that hub will have problems, and some of those, like Wichita, you don't need to have 4 malls or 3 malls. You're gonna have fewer, bigger malls. And so like you can see like Newmarket Square in Wichita, where that just keeps on growing and growing and growing. But some of those outlying littler strips, those are having problems. So if you're looking at the research, it will be interesting, like I said, to see how it goes in the whole region. But for Finney County specifically, it looks like we're in a pretty good position for retail and to continue to grow that retail base.
Good.
Okay, so the other thing is, well, how are we doing so good? I mean, besides retail, how do we keep on having more and more sales? And this is a really interesting data set that Lana was made aware of by one of her colleagues out from Eastern Kansas in Emporia. In Emporia, and Lana has a better story than I can do. But he says, you're doing it again to us. And you say, what do you mean? And you say, well, look at this report. You're not looking, have you seen this report yet? And I'm like, well, no. So this is the Gartner Economics. They do this nationwide, so this isn't just specifically for Kansas or Finney County. They do this everywhere and produce these reports annually. But it's really interesting, and it's about our job growth over the last 5 years. So,
There we go.
the first one, and this one we jump into the important slide right away. First thing, this is a map of job growth numbers, not rates. This is number. The bluer it is, the more positive growth. The redder is more negative growth. If you have these grayish ones, it's somewhere in between positive or negative 200 jobs. Some of these, like Scott and Syracuse, they are up like 60 jobs over the last 5 years. So, I mean, but it's in there. And if you, oh, hold on, go back. If you notice something about Western Kansas, there's only one county that's been growing at a positive rate, and that's us. And not only is that a positive rate, it's at the top of the scale positive rate. Here's Riley County. It's not even at the top of the scale positive rate. So when we're talking about our job growth, we're growing jobs. And we're not just growing for the size of our community, we're growing at rates, numbers, faster than a lot of these bigger counties. Okay, so now next slide. So if we go and talk about rates, we're doing really well as well. This is was pulled out because the city, when we, Garden City looks at comparable cities, cities of the first class between 20,000 and 100,000 population. So Sedgwick County isn't on here because that's too large of a city. But if there's a city inside this county that falls into that range, this county's here. So Johnson County has a couple of them, Olathe and Overland Park and stuff like that. So here's all the counties that fall into that comparison. And we can see that Finney County, as a rate, is also, we've grown over the last 5 years, 7.7% of our, we've grown 7.7% jobs. So that's, so not only are we growing numbers, we're also growing at a very quick rate. So, let's look at the top 25 counties. So these are the top 25 counties by jobs in Kansas. So we have the number of jobs, this is our change, and this is our percent change. So if you look at here, Finney County has grown about 1,400 jobs. Let's just look up here at Riley, they grew 400 jobs. We grew, Finney County grew triple the jobs, not rate, triple the number of jobs as Riley County over the last 5 years. So you can see, we're doing really well. And so one of the things that we need to think about though, is we're a rural county. We have a lot of things against us. If they talk about, when people say, what's gonna make a rural county succeed? If you look at the research, so metros are gonna grow. I mean, metros, people just keep on moving to metros because they grow because they're there, they keep on growing. What makes a rural county survive? If you look at the data, there's two things. Either four-year colleges or interstates, four-year divided four-lane interstates. So if we go look at this data, and we say, okay, well, look at all these counties in the top 25 counties, job-wise, in Kansas. Who has a four-year college, four-year university? So, I mean, it could be a college like Southwestern College, but four-year college. And who has interstate? Highlighted here are the counties that don't have either. They don't have a four-year college, they don't have an interstate. If it's red, it's a negative growth. If it's blue, it's a positive growth. There's only 2 counties in Kansas that grew without having a four-year college and without having the interstate. Finney County, which was one of the top growers, and the only one in the western Kansas. And then this other little non-university, non-interstate county called Potawatomi, which is right on the interstate and in Manhattan. So, I mean, technically they get to be in this group, but really they're K-State and they're on I-70. I mean, for all intents and purposes. So you can see, if we're talking about factors that make us, that help rural communities survive, we don't get that support that other counties get. So much so, if we look at that data and you say, how much does a four-year college help or hurt a county for growth and an interstate? The counties that do have that four-year college, on average, grew 3.2%. If they didn't have it, they shrank 4.5%. So the net effect of having a four-year college over the last 5 years in Kansas was a 7.7% growth. Same thing with interstate. The counties that had interstate, 2.7% growth. If they didn't have interstate on average, negative 3.1. And remember, Potawatomi gets to be on this side, so they even help out on these that make it even not as bad, even though they technically are. So the effect of having a four-year interstate in your county is 5.8% growth over the last 5 years. So Finney County, we grew by ourselves 7.7%. If we were to have had a four-year college, we could have added another 7% over the last 5 years. If we were to have had a four-year lane, an interstate, we would have been able to grow 5.8% more, because that's what the trend is doing. So we did a good job at 7.7%, but if we would have had these opportunities as well, we could have been looking at the last 5 years at 20% growth in our job population. So to emphasize where that infrastructure is and all this stuff, here's a map mapping out this data. You can see where there's investment happening, or has happened in Kansas, and where the investment has not happened. We're making it, despite all those efforts. Anybody want to guess what this is? This four-year college here?
The closest four-year
The
college to
closest
us.
four-year college that we have.
Barkley.
Yeah.
Barkley College.
Avalon?
Avalon, yeah. So this one, all 200 students that they have. But, so when people say, well, all the growth is happening in eastern Kansas, well, I can see why. You have all your interstates there, you have all your four-year colleges there, of course you're gonna get all your growth there. And even then, sometimes it's not that. A Riley County here, or not Riley, Geary had negative growth, but that's also because of they're highly dependent on the
Federal
base.
government.
Yeah. So that's another really important, interesting piece of where the job growth is happening and what other things we could be doing to potentially look at furthering growing that job. So you can see, I mean, why we keep on continuing to be the hub and growing as a hub of Western Kansas.
Do you think it's important to note these are net jobs?
Yes.
So they have taken any job losses out of the job growth.
Yep.
So that's important to note. The other thing that's really important is the quality of those jobs.
That's the next slide.
So he's gonna go into that.
So we do have one more slide. So the other thing that people could say from Eastern Kansas, say, well, sure, you grew all those jobs, but they're not high-paying jobs. So if we go look, so we can address this two ways. One way is say, well, what's our median household income? If these are a lot of low-paying jobs, our median household income should be going down. And actually, if we look at our median household income, compared to, we'll just pick out the next one below us, Riley counties, we're actually doing a little bit better than some of these university towns for the median household income. So we're actually right in the middle. Our median household income is right in the middle of those top 25 counties. Further, when we looked at the jobs that were created, of the almost 1,400 jobs, 266 of those were in the what are they called?
Retail, hospitality, and
Yeah, retail, hospitality.
Restaurants.
And restaurants.
Yeah, so
So
they,
about
those are the
300
entry level type.
So yeah, about 300 was in that category, 1,100 was in the other over the last 5 years. So you can definitely see it, and like Lana was saying, this number has been steadily going up every year. We saw that in the chat study as well. Our median household income had a significant increase over just the last 2 years on this. So we're not just creating any jobs. Wyandotte County made 7,500 jobs, but they have really low pay. We grew 1,400 jobs, and our number keeps on going up. Those jobs that we're creating are high income jobs. So,
Is it available to see kind of the last 5 years in that category? This slide comparing the last 5 years, that would be interesting to see. Because I think the trend line, one of the things we're running into in our Governor's Council on Education is we are continually preached about the benefits of a 4-year college education. And yet they show that a typical college graduate will be making $42,000 to $48,000. And we sit back and we look at it from the technical education side, and without student debt, they'll be making that or more. And sooner or later, we're gonna be making decisions based on perceived facts. And I think if we base all of our decisions on facts that are not relevant or true, or based on something that's real, we'll be making some really dreaded decisions. And I think the more input we can get from the real world, the real advantage it would be. So we don't have a phenomenal growth in the last 5 years of that 1,393 jobs that we've increased in that 5-year period. But we've moved, I would assume, somewhere from the $48,000 to the $56,000 range. And they're not all 4-year graduate jobs.
no, there's a different data set that I started to look at, but it is massive. But it does talk about pay per specific job type. And I only found it for this last year, but I'm sure we could go back and find it for each of the subsequent
Well, if it's
years.
from the Department of
I can get
Labor,
it for you from the
Yeah.
Perkins stuff that we have.
Right,
if it's from the Department of Labor, that's the ones that we're working on,
right,
and they're way wrong.
okay.
And I think that's what we have to do, is to say, all right, this is the nationwide perception of this job. And I think we need to be able to get it down into not only Kansas, but in our region. And that's going to be the difficult thing.
And
Sooner or later, we have to have that.
And related to that, with this Kansas and all this stuff, in Kansas City, KCK, getting a college education so you can get a job at Sprint, or you can get a job at Garmin or whatever, that makes sense. For us, that same education doesn't have the same returns on investment. Where here, those technical jobs, those are the ones that have the direct, immediate return on investment. And we live in a completely different world than Eastern Kansas. And part of this is just making them realize you can't apply one formula to all of Kansas and get the same results. And we found a formula, whatever that formula is, we found a formula where we are growing our jobs, growing our economy, our sales, our retail sales, and growing our household income without specifically the things that everybody else in the nation says we have to be able to grow. What is it that's making our county grow when even other counties, it's not just our area, the other counties don't see that? What is it specifically that's happening in Finney County that we are realizing this much growth even though we have so much headwind against us? So,
Now, these two companies that have made these studies, they're independent?
yeah, so the job growth one is completely independent. They just do this as a nationwide, there's no possible agenda that they have besides just reporting the data. The Gruen and Gruen one was contracted out to show the demand for that. And you say, well, maybe they're guessing a little bit high. But we saw what they reported with the Shulman crossing. Their first report was spot on. I mean, they knew when they had their reports, and you go back and look at what they said, how the market's going to change, what our trade area is, all those things, what our demand can handle. down to the square foot that we can handle at that time. They did a very good job at that, so I feel confident, even though they are a hired firm to prove that we do need a need for a specific project. Before, when they did that, they did a really good job at it, so I would feel confident in the findings that they found in that report as well.
I think it would be a tremendous tool to have in our bucket if we took that original analysis of what Shulman Crossing could do, and
Yeah.
then take 5 years later and say, okay, here it is in actuality.
Yeah.
And then here is the next view of where we're going,
Yes.
so that it does prove the concept when you do take this packet and go on to the people that say, wait a minute, your community's not large enough to have this kind of a retail establishment. You
Right.
can say, well, here's what we do.
Show them those retail outlets or franchises that. hey,
Right.
we
Show them the
have-
pieces that have worked, so.
Right, yeah,
Well,
we
this
can
is-
pull that together because, yeah, that would be a very impactful piece.
You know, I think the other thing that really solidifies this number here is the housing market in Finney County. If you look at the evaluation of the houses that are being sold, you know, where that evaluation process has gone to, all of our real estate has appreciated immensely over the years, and the fact that it's still selling at that level, and it's selling very rapidly at that level, justifies the fact that our income is raising with that. Otherwise, you know, these new jobs and new people wouldn't qualify for all this housing sales and everything else. So I think that's a real factor that, you know, kind of puts that all together, saying, you know, this is pretty real.
Yeah.
Do you think that the hub way out yonder, you said that they're coming in, but do you think the people out yonder are going to diminish because we already have the hub?
Okay, so there's two points to that. I mean, one thing you could say, well, if we become the hub in the future, and we continue to grow the hub,
Continue.
people in Scott City or wherever would choose to live here instead of Scott City. So that's one thing, and we haven't seen that yet. Scott City, I mean, some of those outlying communities that act as like our suburbs, they seem to be going strong. The other factor that could cause a diminished in rural population, like you're saying, is just the overall negative growth that rural populations have. And if you look at projections long-term, like 10, 20 years, and actually the Gruen and Gruen study touches on this a little bit, they're projecting in our trade area for the rural populations to go down slightly. It's like maybe 1% over 20 years. The good thing that came with that, and I didn't include it in here, I mean, I can talk about a whole bunch of stuff. One of the interesting things in that is, even though our secondary and tertiary trade area population might slightly decline because of just exiting the region in general, not just moving to Garden City, but exiting the region, the projected household income in those areas are projected to more than make up for the spending power. So even if we have less people over the next 10 to 20 years, slightly less people in our trade area, the spending power is projected to go up by more than that. So us, Finney County as a hub, should continue to grow because there will be more retail dollar demand total. So there are two ways you can look at that, though. Yeah.
Well, and I think even if we lost jobs in these surrounding counties, I think the people will stay there and travel to and from the jobs because they still want the benefit of living in that small community. There's a lot of advantages, schools and all the other kind of things that come with that. So it's really good. It's powerful
This is
information.
fantastic. I like your job recruitment or I think if you had some of these types of slides to have there to show kids, hey, our income in Garden City is well above the average, and we are well within what those big cities have, we offer the same thing right here in Phoenix County, and we should be able to attract some of those kids. And the other thing is
Without the four-year degree.
that is correct, without,
Yeah.
and also reaching outside, with Phoenix County to Scott County, Kearney County, all of those other counties saying, hey, look, here's the opportunity to keep your kids close. You know, if your kids are gonna go, you know, they're gonna graduate from high school and they wanna go to Wichita, they wanna go to Kansas City or one of those other areas, hey, you can get your grandkids here closer to you right here in Phoenix County and be able to see. So that.
Well, and I think we've seen in the past, we've been fairly successful with approaches like that.
Mhm.
I mean, I could use myself as an example. I wasn't raised here, but I chose here because it was close to my family, but it wasn't the same town. as
Right.
my family.
Sure.
So it's close enough to travel, but it's different for those smaller towns because Garden City is their big city.
Mhm.
So those kids coming here to live isn't that far of a stretch for them.
No.
We still struggle so much with the kids coming out of our own high school,
Right.
of the, I don't wanna stay here, it's terrible here. I mean, just really going to them and saying, these are the things that we have available to you.
Yep.
If you'll just,
This
get
right here,
out of
Keisha,
yourself
yeah.
just a touch, we have things for you to do, we have good jobs. I think we're definitely gaining headway on those.
Good.
It's been getting in front of them and it's an education. It's an education for them, but also for us too, because you have to learn how to speak their language, so.
It is building the quality of life that we're starting to realize as a region. Things like the Star Bond and things like that, that's going to build quality of life, and things like United Wireless and Dodge. I mean, those kinds of things will allow us to attract more people back to our community.
Tim had a question?
Well, not so much a question as a comment, but don't you think really our biggest asset, we're in the middle of nowhere.
We're in the center of it all.
Yet we elected to be someone.
Right.
That is our biggest asset. Yeah, we could use more education, particularly in the area of trade and technical. And we could use interstate. Also, interstate gets you away from here faster. By being in the middle of nowhere and having the
That's
attitude,
some
we are
advantages.
going to succeed, that is our whole advantage. And I disagree that if you put the universities here and the interstate here, that you're going to go to 20% increase. No,
Right.
you won't. It just doesn't work that way.
Right.
But our biggest advantage is being in the middle of nowhere and having the attitude to succeed.
I agree.
That's well stated.
Commissioner Dries, you had a question?
Mr. Chairman,
Comment?
I had an observation after Shannon gave this presentation to the county within about 5 days. Somehow or another, this is out across the state, Montgomery County, the Wells Fargo agent from Montgomery County. If you remember on the map, he lost 1,200 people on his county. He was begging me, asking me the same questions you just said. What are you guys doing? Please, we're dying here. They've lost their hospital, their communities are dying. And he just begging me, what are you guys doing? Because he evidently saw these maps that, this presentation that you gave us. And he's called me back twice. He followed up 10 days later, wanting, come on.
Where you at?
And I have not given him your number.
I mean, the short answer is start 50 years ago, building a foundation to be able to grow like this now. I mean,
Exactly.
it's because of how we've managed our growth in a very manageable way. Our water
Progressive
rights, and I
manner,
mean,
yeah.
our power, I mean, all these things. I mean, it's not something where you can take.
Well, that's
Even
what I
if you
felt.
take our city itself and move it to a different county, it's not going to work. The infrastructure is important. The decisions that's been made through the whole history of our city
Exactly.
is what's
This has
made
been a
us work.
result of a lot of people over a lot of years, a lot of hard work. So it's nothing that just happened.
Right, and that's like most of the projects that we do. It only took overnight and then 3 years before that.
I think a key component is collaboration between all the
Absolutely.
entities in a one community to come together to work together for this right here, for
Exactly.
these results. Yes.
Well done.
Very good.
Good job.
This is
Good
interesting.
information.
Next month, I won't be up here as much. This was three months of reports all piled into one.
This is
Very
fantastic
good.
information. Wow.
Yeah, so, Mr. Kennedy, yes. This is,
I do want to join. I go take the picture to Japan newspaper.
Oh, okay.
this is Mr.
That-
Tomino Sono.
Yeah.
He is looking at some agricultural land in the area and is really interested in these kinds of things that we're seeing here. So one thing that he's doing is when he meets people, he wants to take a picture so he can take it back to Japan and show them who he's met and tell them who they are. So he would like to take a picture with
I do
the
it
board.
in here, newspaper, you know, that's it. Just, I don't know.
Just stand there, okay.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, we'll be about as tall as each other. We'll be good.
Lana, why don't you come up here? You need to be a part of this too, because you're the ones that's doing all of the coordination.
Yeah.
Please stand, yeah, that's fine. Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right.
Okay, I'll come back then. So exciting.
Very good.
We're gonna look for you on a return trip. You're leaving tonight?
Yeah, tonight is about, yeah.
Okay. well,
Oklahoma.
Good luck.
Oklahoma City.
Oh, yeah,
3 days.
Oklahoma.
Chicago 3 days, then go back.
Yeah, well, good luck with Oklahoma.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, appreciate it. That's all.
All right. Thank you, Shannon. That's very interesting. I'll talk to you about putting together a program for Lions Club one of these days. I think this is the kind of information that social clubs need to see, you know, and the groups around Garden City need to see this information and understand, you know, what these numbers mean and how they're derived and what's driving that. You know, there are a lot of things, you know, and downtown Fall Fest last week, you know, all of these things that happen within the community really are valuable. So thank you. New business. Director terms expiring. We have 4. Ron's up for re-election this year. Bob is, Larry is, and Steve is. Bob has expressed a desire to continue. Haven't had a chance to visit with Larry or Ron, but hopefully you'll give us some consideration and
You being kind of new on the board, how long is your board?
3 years.
3-year term. Yeah.
You serve the remainder of a term, and that's why yours is up.
So you're up on a short term, but next term would be a full 3 years. So, and Larry, if you
I've already expressed to her.
okay, good. And we'll visit with Steve and.
Yeah, I have a meeting scheduled with Dr. Ruda, and we'll start
See
some of
how
those
the-
discussions to see how they want to proceed with their
Right.
appointment.
See how the
So they may
college
be able to potentially appoint Steve as their representative, is that the?
They certainly can. There's nothing that requires
To be a
any
trustee.
entity to have an elected or, you know, or non-elected. They, by practice, the city of Garden City and Finney County have neither wanted electeds because it does create another level of transparency, if you will, when this board is appointed versus elected officials serving in this capacity. But for the history, the city of Holcomb has had an elected official and the community college has had a trustee, but certainly their business how they choose to do that. So we will have discussions with them and let them know so that they can act on their terms.
Okay. Any other questions or comments or anything? All right. Don't have any old business. Do we need an executive session today for anything?
We probably need about 10 minutes.
Yeah, information stuff, yeah.
All right. So I'd entertain a motion to adjourn our regular session and reconvene in 2 minutes at 8:45 for a 10-minute executive session. Got a motion for that, and got a second. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay. We will adjourn, reconvene in 1 minute now. So, thank you all for coming.